Hello. So with the UK YA Author Week and Christmas, I haven't done a monthly reads video in quite a while. So I thought I would go through some of the books that I read in November and December. I'm not going to go through them all because otherwise this video will be like 4 hours long and nobody wants that, do they? Do they want that? No? So without further ado, I'm going to see if I can get Maple here to lay down, and I will go through some of my favourite reads through November and December. So it would appear that Maple wants to tell you about the first book. Do you? No? Be in no particular order because if I'm quite honest, I can no longer decipher November from December and what happened in each month, so I'm just going to go with the order of my piles. So first up we have Half a King. Now this, I have to admit, has been on my shelves for about a year and I've just not picked it up. Now when I think about the reasons why, it seems really silly now, but basically Joe Abercrombie is an author that I am obsessed with. I love his writing, his fantasies are always incredible, from the world building to the characters, I adore it all. So knowing that this was a YA and not an adult fantasy, I was slightly worried about how he'd handle the transition from writing for adult to writing for YA and whether it would lose some of its spark. But of course I needn't have worried because this was incredible. The character driven plot that I have come to love in his work was still there. The characters in here I would die for. The adventure is there. The world building, despite it being less prominent than what you'd expect from an adult fantasy, is still there and incredibly well described. Like, you really feel like you're falling into the world despite it being quite a short book for a fantasy. Obviously not for a YA fantasy, but for what I'm used to with his work. So in Half a King we follow the story of our main character. Now he is the youngest son of the king, second in line for the throne, but he's never viewed as being a shoo-in for the throne. He's born with only one good hand and is viewed by the society, the rest of the royal family and his entire world as a weakling. This is a world where being a warrior is one of the most highly sought after traits, and obviously with only one good hand he can't wield a sword and a shield at the same time, so he has spent his entire life preparing to become part of the ministry. Now this is something he actually wants. He wants to be part of the ministry, he likes using his mind, but unfortunately both his father the king and his brother, the first in line, die in slightly mysterious circumstances, and he is left to take up the mantle of the throne. Things kind of go a bit wrong from there, shall we say, and he's left on a quest for vengeance and to gain back the kingdom that is rightfully his. This is an incredible first book in a trilogy. I absolutely adored it. Everything that I loved about the author's writing was here. It set up the story really well. The characters and everything were incredible and I absolutely adored them. And it's a great fantasy. So if you're looking for kind of a fantasy to get into, the whole trilogy is absolutely complete and I'm actually planning on reading the second one this month. So all in all, it's a great fantasy and I'm very annoyed that it has sat on my shelf for so long, without being read. But it's remedied now, and we'll just have to move on with the rest of the series. So next up we have Defy the Night. Now I will admit I wasn't expecting incredible things from this, but that was merely because a lot of the kind of talk about this at the time I picked it up was about the romance element, and whilst I do love a romance, especially in fantasy, I like it to be an addition to the plot rather than the entire story, but I needn't have worried because the author has managed to interweave it beautifully within the main story. Now, Defy the Night is heavily influenced by the Prince of Thieves, aka Robin Hood, and takes part in a kingdom on the brink of rebellion, filled with corruption and held together by two royal brothers. Now, they rule primarily through fear, and aren't seen as very nice or kind rulers. The kingdom they are in charge of has been affected by a plague, and the only known cure to this plague is an elixir made from an incredibly rare and hard to grow petal. In fact, you can only grow this petal in 2 provinces within the kingdom, leading to power struggles and an incredible political intrigue element to this story, all about what happens when certain people within a kingdom have more power than others. Now, because the main ingredient of the elixir is so rare, there's not enough to go around. However, if you're rich and powerful, of course, you can buy more. This doesn't lead to a very fair system, and obviously leads towards rebellion. Now, Defy the Night takes 2 points of view, one of the prince and another of Tessa. Now, Tessa has lost both of her parents, but her parents before their deaths did teach her how to make the elixir. So now she's a masked outlaw, stealing petals from the rich and creating elixirs for the poor. And that's where the story starts. It's an incredible story with characters that you just can't help but root for, political intrigue, courtly politics, a kingdom on the brink of collapse. It's such a good book, and yes, I will admit, I adore the romance element of it as well. It's definitely worth picking up. It's so beautifully written. You'll totally dive headfirst into the world and be swept up in it. I loved it. It was such a great rebellion story, and the points of view were incredible. I need more of it. I didn't want it to end. And I am converted, so I feel incredibly guilty about not having high expectations for this. But yeah. I also was incredibly lucky to read Dead Lucky. Sorry, can't help myself. So this actually comes out on the 13th of January, and we will have signed book plates in store. So if you are interested, definitely keep in contact and keep your eyes open, because I'll let you know when everything is there. Dead Lucky is a brand new thriller, and my god, the twists in this, I didn't see come in. I don't know how she did it. It's so good. Like, I was so swept up with the characters and their point of view and what was happening in the story. I couldn't see the twist. And usually I like to think I'm quite good at spotting twists, but I didn't see it coming. It was incredible. I couldn't have thought of a better twist if I tried. Dead Lucky is set in the world of influencers and follows multiple perspectives and multiple lives of a group of influencers who started together and have drifted into their own spheres of influence. So we have beauty and makeup influencers, gaming influencers, all that kind of thing. What I really loved about this is the world that was created. It gave you insight into a world that most of us don't know about. We all know influencers, you're probably following some, and we know they get gifted things and they do adverts and all this kind of things. They get to go to really cool parties, but you don't often get to see behind the scenes and the reality of what it would be like to be an influencer, from the stress of always having to say the right thing to other everyday things we don't really think about. And I loved that element of this. Also, this is a murder mystery that will just blow your socks off. So the murder in this starts right at the beginning and happens on a live stream, and is committed by somebody wearing a mask. And the whole plot is trying to figure out who this masked individual is, whilst they threaten others within the friendship group. Now, this friendship group has drifted apart, but obviously a murder is enough to bring people back together and get them talking again and trying to figure out what is happening. This is incredible. It will blow your socks off. It's so refreshing. I've never read anything based on influencers before, and I adored it, and will now, if there are more influencer thrillers, would love to read them. But yeah, this is incredible. It's out on the 13th of January. There will be a pre-order link to our bookshop.org page, and if you can get to store, we will have book plates, signed book plates, and I will be talking to the author on the 10th, so that's Monday, at 7 p.m. I believe, but I'll link it all down in the description below. So if you do have any questions about this, please do let me know and I will put them to the author. But yeah, overall, this is an incredible murder thriller mystery that has a twist that if you see coming, you must be a genius, is all I'm gonna say. So next up was a reread, and that's because the sequel / follow-up is coming out in February and I have approved for that, so I wanted to get reacquainted with the original, and that is Pet. Now, this book is so important and amazingly done and will knock your socks off, and asks the question, how do we save the world if no one believes that monsters exist? So in the world that is explored in Pet, angels have removed all monsters. There's no monsters anymore. There's no criminals. There's nothing. The world isn't ruled by corrupt politicians anymore. Basically, it's a utopia. But it asks the question that once you've rid the world of all the monsters you know about, and everyone believes that monsters are no longer a thing, what happens when a monster rears its head? It's an incredible book, and I don't want to tell you anything more than that. It focuses on Jam, who is a black teen with selective mutism, who goes on this adventure to save the world from a monster who nobody else will admit exists. And it's so brilliantly done and so powerful and beautiful and gorgeous and hopeful, and it's an incredible book. It's really short, like you will read this in one evening and you'll do it in one sitting because the pacing is incredible and you won't want to put it down. So I am very much looking forward to reading the second one, which is Bitter, that comes out in February. So that's next up in my kind of TBR for the month. but Pet is incredible, and if you haven't read it yet, please do. Next up, we have a book that I have spoken about and hugged on camera I don't know how many times, and that is The Boy I Am. So I read this back at the start of November before my interview with KL Kettle, which is on my YouTube, and I will link down below if you want to go back and watch that. This is an incredible YA novel. It's a speculative fiction with a thriller element in there, and it will open your eyes to the world that we are in. So, The Boy I Am explores a world in which men are not the ones in power, women are. Now, this is a dystopian world set in the future where women have all the power and men are nothing more than servants. Now, they can be auctioned off in hopes of servitude, otherwise the other options are not all that great. In this book we follow our main character Jude, who you will fall in love with and wish to protect and wrap in cotton wool. Overall, I love this, not just for the thriller mystery element that is expertly woven throughout the whole tale, but the world building and how it makes you think. It highlights things that happen in today's society, from catcalling to other things, so well, and when viewed through a lens of females being in power and men being the ones receiving this horrible treatment, it really highlights how absurd it is that it happens in today's society. The Boy I Am is something that is in my top 10 reads of 2021, probably in the top 5. That is absolutely gorgeous to look at, incredible to read, the pacing is incredible. Like, it's such a good book. It's so good. I love it. I love Jude. I love the other characters. They're not all great, but you know, it's a great book, and you should read it. So next up we have this beauty. Now, for those of you that don't know, I myself have a few chronic illnesses, and chronic illnesses are not really something that I found talked about in a lot of books, never mind a book being about that. So when I saw this, I actually got an e-proof of this, and I read the dedication and I think about the first 3 lines and immediately was like, I need to own this book. So this novel explores the reality of chronic illness. It's absolutely incredible. It plays and features a lot of what it is like to have a chronic illness. It's so well done. It explores the reality of having to get a lot of your support online and the isolation that comes with chronic illness, and how friendships formed online and support groups online can be a real lifesaver, especially when you're having flares or when you are first discovering what it is like to be chronically ill. Chronic illness is something that's really complicated, and despite living with it myself for half my life, more than half my life, find really difficult to talk about, but this does it so well in a really fun way. There's elements of conversations online and text chats, as well as travelling. It's a coming of age story. It's a coming to terms with the reality of a new normal, as I always like to say. The life you had before is not something that you're gonna have going forward, but there's ways to deal with that, friendships that can be formed and a new life to be found that might not be what you expected when you were younger or before you got chronically ill. But yeah, this book is something that you should just read. I don't want to say too much more about it. It is absolutely incredible. And for those who were wondering, the dedication is for anyone who doesn't feel at home in their body, which hit me right in the feels. And then the first couple of lines when I read the ebook were like, and that is, ticks don't actually have teeth. I looked it up afterwards, scrolling through photos with that same kind of sick fascination of watching someone pop a pimple. This is fun and realistic and filled with dark humour. The main character has Lyme disease, hence the tick reference. And it's just something, it was really kind of therapeutic to read, and it was fun. And I think even if you don't have a chronic illness, this is just a really good story. The plot's incredible. The friendships are incredible. So yeah. Next up we have Jade Fire Gold. Now this is another one that I'm not going to go into too much detail about because I did talk about it in my top 10. This is a really recent read. I think it was the end of December that I read this. It might even be like one of my last reads of the year. But it so quickly shot up into my top 10. It was unbelievable. And that, I promise, is not just because of the beautiful orange cover. Now, this book, it is everything I want in a fantasy. There's elemental magic, destiny, political intrigue, the repercussions of war. Some of my favourite quotes from books ever are in this novel, and I just adore it. We have two main characters who are amazing together and amazing apart. Their amazingness doesn't rely on the fact that they are together, but when they are together, you're so happy for them that they're in the same place. I loved this, and if you want to know more about it, please do go check out the top 10 video. But yeah, if you're looking for a fantasy that has everything, this is the one to go for. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. I don't know where I've put my copy. It's probably on one of my many piles or bookcases somewhere, because I recently talked about it on Instagram, and that is Rebel of the Sands. Now, it is an absolutely incredible fantasy. It's one of 3 which are all out, so if you're looking for a trilogy to stick your teeth into, it might be the one for you. Rebel of the Sands focuses on our main character, who is really on a journey to find out where she belongs and who she is. The book itself, the magic is incredible. The world building will draw you into the page. The battle and fight scenes are on another level, combining an amazing magic system with epic gunslinging, which is something that I didn't know I needed in a fantasy, but now I have it. I feel like more fantasies need to include it. It was an incredible first book. It set up the story really well, and I really cannot wait to get onto book 2 and book 3 because also they're beautiful. Overall, yeah, I really loved Rebel Sands, which is the first one, and I can't wait to read book 2 and 3, which I'm hoping to get to at this, like, the first half of this year, so I can say I've then completed the trilogy. That is it for not all, but most of the books that I read in kind of November/December. I'm really sorry that things got away with me and that I couldn't film a November and December, but the end of 2021 was hectic, and I think it was for everyone, so I think you'll understand. And I will be back soon doing a recap of January's reads. I'm already 2 books into January and they are so good. I've started the year strong, and I'm just hoping that I can continue that trend. But yeah, Any questions, do let me know, and obviously I will link all the information from the video in the description below. But yeah, I will see you next time. Bye!